Jagmeet, you can go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone for joining. Today, I want to talk about the Liberals' plan to cut the help to people who cannot get back to work, whose sectors are still shut down, by $800 a month. This is going to impact nearly 2 million Canadians. 1.8 million Canadians are using the CRB because their sectors are still shut down. We are not through this pandemic. We have seen outbreaks continue across the country. And we know that there may be additional potential lockdowns in different communities. Given the unpredictability, given the fact we are still in this pandemic, the fact that the Liberal government is cutting help to people in their budget by $800 a month would be disastrous. It would be devastating for a family that has no other way to keep food on the table or to pay their bills. So we are, again, putting pressure on the Liberal government. Stop the cut. We are in this pandemic. People still need support. Let's continue the support to people until we are through the pandemic, until we know for certain that we can continue to work and all the sectors that have been impacted are able to return to work. And I also want to point out the Liberal government seems to have no problem with the wealthiest corporations in Canada that have taken public money and turned around and paid out dividends, taken public money and laid off workers. Those are the people that this government should be going after, those corporations that have cheated the system. They have taken public money and not used it in an appropriate way. The big banks were underwritten with billions of dollars. This Liberal government basically gave banks billions of dollars to secure their position. And now these banks are turning around and gouging Canadians by increasing bank fees. That's who this Liberal government should be focusing their attention on, not people like Sherelle, who we're going to hear from. It is incredibly important that in this pandemic, this Liberal government not hurt people, not cut the help to people, and not cut the CRB. It would be, again, very painful for families. And we'll hear from someone who might be impacted by this decision. Again, we should be focusing our attention on getting people through this pandemic, giving the support they need. And if anyone should be a focus of scrutiny, it should be those wealthy corporations that took public money, that used it inappropriately, that paid out dividends, that increased payouts to their CEOs. That should be the focus of attention. That's where the Liberal government should be putting their attention, not on people like Sherelle. Donc, dans cette pandémie, la réalité, c'est que la pandémie continue. On est dans une crise et c'est clair que les nombres de cas augmentent de temps en temps et c'est imprévisible à ce moment à cause des variantes, à cause du nombre de scénarios. Donc, ce qu'on exige le gouvernement de faire, continuer l'aide aux gens jusqu'au moment qu'on a vraiment réussi à défaire la pandémie. À ce moment, ce que le gouvernement libéral propose de faire, c'est de couper l'aide aux gens. La PCRE, ils ont coupé l'aide aux gens pour le mois de juillet et le mois d'août. Et c'est ce qu'ils vont faire à ce moment. On exige le gouvernement libéral, on exige Justin Trudeau d'arrêter ces coupures. Au lieu de mettre la pression, au lieu d'attaquer les artistes, les gens comme Cherelle on va attendre dans quelques minutes, le gouvernement libéral doit cibler les grandes entreprises qui ont pris l'argent public, mais ils n'ont pas l'utilisé dans une bonne manière. Ils ont coupé le nombre de travailleurs dans leur entreprise ou ils ont rémunéré les actionnaires. Ce sont les entreprises que le gouvernement doit attaquer ou doit régler un problème, pas les gens comme Cherelle. Donc encore, on exige du gouvernement d'arrêter les coupures, continuer l'aide aux gens. Leur proposition, c'est de couper l'aide jusqu'à $800 par mois, quelque chose qui va être désastreuse pour les gens. Thank you so much for being here again. And with that, I'm ready for your questions. Merci infiniment. Before we go to questions, more importantly than me, you're here to hear from someone who is going to be impacted directly. So I want to take this moment to thank Sherelle for being here. And Sherelle, please, the mic is now yours. Share your story. It is a story that will reflect the reality for nearly 2 million Canadians that can't get back to work and that are faced with this fear of losing that support that they need. So thank you, Sherelle, for being here. And the mic is now yours.
Thank you so much, Jagmeet, for having me speak today.
First of all, I want to truly tell you how much I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to tell the story. I'm a professional recording, performing, and touring artist. And at the end of 2019, my band Stone Poets had just gotten off a successful tour in Eastern Canada. And I had our 2020 schedule booked, which included 30 festivals, concerts, small theaters, performance spaces, private events, house concerts, like so many other artists had done. And mid-March 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic was closing in on us, and I watched one by one all of our shows cancel. And at the same time, the lockdowns were happening, and our music industry came to a screeching halt. My husband is also a professional recording, performing, and touring musician, and he's also a music teacher. So on top of losing all of those gigs that we had, he lost most of his students and was only able to retain a small handful, teaching them online. He actually performs with one of Canada's most beloved rock bands, Prism. I'm sure you guys all know that band. And their touring schedule was heavy, and it was super heartbreaking watching all those shows fold as well. The uncertainty and the fear that we all felt, and I can speak for all of our music community, absolutely devastation. And we were left not knowing what would happen to the music industry. At that time, with no income and no end in sight, the CERB was a life raft. And as you can imagine, it was extremely stressful not knowing how long the CERB would actually be in place. And we waited on pins and needles with each extension announcement. We were absolutely terrified that we may need to sell off instruments and gear and could possibly lose our home. And then in October 2020, the CERB changed to the CRB, the Canada Recovery Benefit, and additional weeks were added due to the second wave. What people may not know, and Jagmeet was just talking about, in a few weeks, Justin Trudeau and his government will be slashing the payments from $500 a week to $300 a week. And if this happens, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what we're going to do. And I think that now I'm speaking for all my professional artist friends. You know, we've spent our life making a living doing this, playing music, and there is absolutely no way that we can live on $1,200 a month. And I'm not sure if Justin and his ministers actually live in the real world. Maybe they don't realize what living on $1,200 a month would be like. Perhaps he could try living on $1,200 a month and get back to me. Let me know how that goes for you. Our music industry is going to be the last industry to come back. It's been 15 months. My husband and I both have been out of work since March 2020, and with no security of when we can start gigging and touring again. And we want to go back to work. It's what we do. Justin Trudeau said that he would have our backs, but he doesn't have our backs if he cuts the CRB from that $500 a week to $300. And I'm so thankful to Jagmeet and his team for allowing me to tell this story. I want to remind folks that this issue affects real people. Times have been super tough. It's going to take about a year for us to get back to where we were before the restrictions. You know, once they're lifted, gigs don't just happen. It takes months and months of planning. And imagine being a promoter right now. Would you take a chance and book a show or a tour, not knowing if a fourth wave will hit or how long it will take to actually reach herd immunity to allow for those festivals and concerts to reopen? It's time for the federal government to step up and support people. And there is still time to change their minds on this decision. So Jagmeet, please tell Justin Trudeau not to turn his backs on us like he made that promise, and he has been doing through the pandemic. Make that promise and keep it. He said he'd have our backs, and we really hope that he will. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sherelle. It is so powerful to hear your words. You've laid out what it would mean to you and to the entire community that you are now representing in a way. You are talking with the voice of everyone that has to work in a musical field where they need to go to a crowd or work in a festival or work in people's homes or teach kids. You are speaking with the voice of thousands of people that are in that same struggle. And we've said this many times. In this pandemic, our focus has to be getting help to people, particularly those impacted by the pandemic. Right now, the impacts are unpredictable. We don't know what's going to happen. And so people like Sherelle don't have the security of knowing if they can get back to work. And so I really want to thank Sherelle for sharing that story. This is exactly why we are fighting against this cut. And to be very clear, basically in just a matter of weeks, Justin Trudeau's proposal is to cut the help to people. Really, it will be an $800 per month cut, $800 less for families that are trying to get through this pandemic. That is wrong. That should not happen. That is the current proposal but we can fix it. We are here to fix it. We've pushed back and stopped the Liberal government cutting help to people many times in the past over this pandemic. We are here again fighting to make sure that they don't do the wrong thing, that we can fix this and make sure people like Sherelle have the support they need until we are through this pandemic. Once again, thank you so much for being here. And now we are ready for your questions. Merci infiniment de votre présence. On est prêt pour vos questions maintenant.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Alors, j'aimerais inviter les membres des médias de veuillez utiliser la fonction lever la main au bas de la page pour poser votre question et question de suivi. I would like to invite members of the media to please use the raise hand function at the bottom of the page to please ask your question and follow up. We will start with Cormac McSweeney with City News. Please go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Singh. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. So I have a couple of questions, a bit unrelated to your announcement today, but in Ontario, we're seeing a big rise in uptake on second doses of vaccines. The system can't really keep up, lineups around the block. We've got, I think, somewhere around 13% of the country with second doses, and given the amount of doses we'll be receiving in the weeks ahead, that number is due to shoot up significantly soon. So I'm just wondering, what's your take on the guidance for people who have received full vaccination? The CDC has had detailed guidance out for weeks now, and Canadians are still left wondering what they can do when they are fully vaccinated. Some provinces say they're waiting on the feds to give that guidance before they issue their guidance. So given where we stand in terms of the vaccination efforts right now, do you think it's time Canadians get some federal guidance on what they can and can't do after they get that second dose of a vaccine?
From the beginning of this pandemic, we've said that the Liberal government has really narrowed their responsibility to just securing doses. And we said that's not good enough. The federal government has the resources to do more, to provide more support in getting people vaccinated, but also in answering the question that you've raised. The federal government should be providing assistance in laying out what when someone is vaccinated, what the next steps are in terms of how safe they are, what can happen next. We need to be very clear so that people have good advice to make decisions around. So this is something where we've seen not just in the vaccine securing the dose, in not really helping to get the vaccine rolled out quick enough. And also, we've seen it when it comes to the Liberal government's failure around the quarantine, that they've focused on one task, which they didn't complete to the best of their ability. I think they should have done a lot better, but they haven't done all these other ancillary roles that the federal government should be playing and should be supporting.
And on a secondary topic, we've seen Major-General Dany Fortin, who was removed from his post as head of vaccine distribution, file court documents in which he's alleging political interference in his removal from the post. What is your reaction to the claims from Major-General Dany Fortin about whether he should have been removed from his post or not, given the fact that he was facing harassment allegations? And then as well, with so much turnover that we've been seeing recently with senior military posts, do you have any concerns at all about national security and the organization of the military when we see so many senior people being removed or switched out from their roles?
At the heart of this, the problem here, at the heart of it is really what was identified 6 years ago in the 2015 report, which identified that there is clearly a problem with sexual harassment in the military. There was something that was identified by Justice Deschamps in her report, that this is a cultural problem and it needs to be fixed. And she made a key recommendation that there needs to be an independent process for any sort of complaints around sexual misconduct and harassment to be raised. There needs to be an independent process for that to be raised. Really at the heart of this is a lack of leadership at the federal level, that Justin Trudeau and the defense minister have not done their job. They have let that recommendation sit for 6 years. We've seen a number of other complaints come forward and no action. And so I blame directly the prime minister, who is at the end of the day, the buck stops with him, and the defense minister. This Liberal government had the responsibility to put in place some changes that would have prevented the instability that we're seeing right now. I blame them for it. And I think that they need to step up and start following through and implementing the recommendation from 2015 and take seriously the problems that we are seeing in the military, because the men and women that serve have done incredible work. They stood up for us and supported people in our times of need when there was a crisis in long-term care, which still exists, but they came at the worst moments and saved lives. They have in many cases helped people in disasters. They have provided incredible support to people, but they are being done a disservice because Justin Trudeau and the defense minister aren't doing what's necessary to put in place a safer practice to ensure women can come forward with complaints.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Alors, juste un dernier appel. Si vous avez une question, veuillez utiliser la fonction lever la main. If you have a question, just last call to please use the raise hand function. I see no more questions. Je ne vois plus de questions. Donc, ceci conclut notre conférence de presse. This concludes our press conference. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Thanks for everyone who attended, and a big thank you to Sherelle for sharing your story. It means a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care.